All right, welcome back, everyone. We are here to do our next up video conversation series. And in true, very small world digital optimization landscape, I get to share a history with the company that this person works for. So I spent very happy years at Brooks Bell a while back. And today we get to talk to Sarah Mason from the Brooks Bell team. And she's gonna cover a really interesting topic with us today around really how do you democratize insights for successful digital optimization. So with that in mind, I will pass the mic over to Sarah to say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here, Jenny. I'm excited to dig in on this with you today. I'll just give a little intro here about myself. I'm a strategic consultant at Brooks Bell, and maybe I'll start there by sharing a little bit more about Brooks Bell itself. Brooks Bell is an experimentation and insights consultancy that's been operating in the optimization space for over 17 years, as you know very well. And I'm sure that over time it's evolved a little bit, but the offerings really range from program advisement to fully managed services. So providing that engine of insights generation for clients through testing and user research, and also collaborative approaches like design workshops. And we also have a homegrown, now public and free for all, forever testing and insights repository called Illuminate. So that's what Brooks Bell is. And as a strategic consultant at Brooks Bell, I help lead program advisement activities and strategy within our fully managed services. So my background's in anthropology and experience design. And a lot of my work in the tech space has been at that place where product strategy and user research come together. And I am personally very passionate about mixed methods and integrated data, and generally just an applied research evangelist. So this topic we're going to talk about today is very near and dear to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I bet you have the coolest job out of all your fellow anthropology majors to be able to work in digital. That's great.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. And more social scientists are really coming out of school, going right into this type of work these days. So it's a pretty interesting shift from when I started in it.
Yeah, I bet. That's awesome. Well, let's kick it off. I'd love to expand a little bit on what you were just sharing and hear a little bit more for the folks here about what kind of focus areas your team is really concentrated on today.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say team. There's our team within Brooks Bell. I work on the solution team, and then of course we're working closely with clients and their teams. But overall, the primary focus is experimentation and optimization. And so as a team at Brooks Bell, we're always looking at emerging trends and technologies in that space. We're thinking about and learning about and cataloging and tracking best practices. And we're always evolving our own experimentation maturity model that we have to inform our advisement and thought leadership in that space. And so we're always thinking about experimentation and optimization within a broader ecosystem of product. For example, which in itself involves business strategy and user research, design and development. And then we're also focused on customer experience more broadly and how experimentation and insights can help solve for complex business problems in general. So of course, we get down into the weeds on testing and optimization, but we're also always sort of tracking back and tacking back to that higher level order of operations and focus. And then I'd also just call it specifically, we do a lot of thinking about integrated data. So both bringing qualitative and quantitative together in new and interesting ways to help find common ground, oftentimes between the business perspective and then the humans who use the products and services. So we talk about finding the people in the data, and we're always trying to do that in a way that pushes things forward and brings a more holistic 360 picture of those problems to be solved.
I love that. I love the idea of finding people in the data. That's so tangible. And you and I have talked so many times about the idea of Qualt being this new kind of concentric circle of where the value really lies. So that's great. So let's peel back and really dive into insights. So I'm curious, what role do you feel like insights play in winning optimization programs that you've seen?
Yeah. Well, I think when it's done right, the gathering and developing and socializing and then sort of aligning around the quality insights around quality insights can really change an organization fundamentally. It can really shift the way that they operate. And when you have a solid growing body of insights that's managed well and it's made accessible to everyone, you can have more wins, of course, which everybody wants, and you can operate more efficiently because you're not spinning your wheels. You can leverage those insights across tests and across teams and even across different parts of an organization. And I think if we're talking about a winning optimization program, we've really got to be talking about impact. So that's moving out beyond that focus on wins and KPIs sometimes, and talking about, once you've got that optimization program that's churning out quality insights that are transferable and can be leveraged across those different parts of the organization, they're going to be having a greater impact at higher levels. And that can mean growth for that optimization team. It means greater influence, and it can mean helping grow a culture of experimentation more broadly across an organization.
That's fantastic. I know how much the culture of experimentation can create that impact over the long term, that we see that so often in the industry. So
Yeah.
Connecting those dots really makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to double click into the examples you've seen where organizations really are successful at democratizing insights across their team and org. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to chat about that. I think there are a couple different ways to talk about that and really do that in an organization. So there's the generation of insights, and then there's the sharing and socialization of insights. So maybe for the moment, we'll put the former aside and we'll talk about, yeah, that's right, the latter. So nope, switch that, reverse it. I want to talk about democratizing the generation of insights within an organization. So that's certainly a hot topic at the moment within the applied research space. And what we mean by that is bringing in, when we're talking about democratizing the generation of insights, we're really talking about bringing in more people and a more diverse set of people into the actual execution of research, analysis, interpretation, and insight generation. So the doing of the research with, broader range of practitioners in every areas of expertise. And that's a hot topic because that inherently requires research specialists to cede a little bit of their territory. And in a way, and in fact, if it's not done right, it can introduce the risk of lower quality insights if people aren't adhering to the rigor required in terms of using best fit methods and recruitment, or if they're coming into analysis and interpretation with a very biased perspective, or sort of looking for something that they want out of the data. So the flip side is that in many cases, those non-researchers, such as product managers, are really tuned in to the business goals and directives. They know the product and the service intimately, better than a lot of people in the organization. And they're really all too aware of the real world constraints that the organization faces in terms of politics and development capacity. And they really have this intense hunger for good quality data. You see that a lot. Of course, people want to be making decisions based on the best information they can, and they want to be able to do that in a timely manner. So the ideal is that these people who need to apply the insights directly to do better work are empowered to do so. And there's a new term that I've heard lately that talks about this group, which is PWDRs. So it's people who do research. So it's non-researchers who are in this research space, and they still maintain that non-research identity in some ways. And yet also it's acknowledging this sort of in-between gray space where people are doing research as well. So they may not be a researcher by training, but they have figured out that research enables them to do their job better, and therefore they want to have a hand in it. And I think that's really where tools like WEVO can play a really significant role in enabling those non-researcher PWDRs to help, provide the structure and the guardrails required to ensure that research quality isn't diminished, but it's driven by somebody who understands exactly what they're trying to get out of it and can be picked up and used at the exact moment when they need it. So there aren't always those bottlenecks that you might run into.
I love that. I love the PWDRs. That's going to go on a sticky note somewhere in my office for sure. And I think it's super interesting that you were describing, you know, that we're in a behavioral psychology business essentially, and we ignore so often that there's behavioral psychology of bias and things like that at play within organizations. So it's really
Mhm.
interesting to hear all that come together. That makes a lot of sense. So you were talking a lot about kind of the layers of this. I'd love to unpack really, how do you differentiate gathering versus socializing insights within an organization?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting to dig into that. And both pieces are really really interesting. Actually, as a sidebar, I think one interesting thing I've heard recently is that when you're really moving from, you know, wanting to be a sort of, well, first of all, there's the gut instinct driven organization, and then there's the data driven organization. But when you really want to move from being data driven to insight driven, it really comes down to communication. That's where you're focused, less around tooling and other things. So I think what we were talking about a moment ago had to do with the democratization of doing research and, you know, the generating and gathering of insights. But there's also this case and space for an organization to focus on democratizing the socialization. And by that, we mean the access to, the sharing of, and then the application of. I think that's a piece that sometimes gets overlooked, but being able to pull insights directly into one's own work. So we're talking about, again, those non-researchers or someone outside of the testing and optimization org being able to do that all in a very independent and empowered way. And so that's really where, again, a tool like Brooks Bell's Illuminate can come in, where even if someone who wasn't involved in the test or the research themselves has this access, there's an accessible and informative record, a reliable record of both the test or the study, and then all of the insights that come out of that. And you can sort of track that back to the original source and understand the context in which that test or research was done. So here again, we're talking about a more diverse group of roles having real-time access to insights so that they can apply them in their work.
That's really fascinating. And you were kind of hinting at the inverse of that, that you've probably seen a lot of organizations that are blocked from doing that successfully. So I'd love to double click into that for a second and understand, you've got this vast experience and perspective across so many orgs. What do you see block organizations from gathering insights in that democratized way?
Yeah. So of course there are tools and process and all sorts of blockers that we could spend a lot of time talking about that relate to democratizing insights. But I think with many things, this all ladders up, and the biggest blockers can really be people problems. So I think one of the biggest blockers tends to be an overall ambivalence or even skepticism at the top levels. So, you know, that sort of old school gut-based decision-making leadership style that it can work in some situations, but in most cases, in the way that the world is working these days, it doesn't or doesn't work as well. And especially if you're talking about something like a product team where, you know, months and years of planning go into the evolution of a product and planning capacity and all those things, dependencies, it can really lead to inefficiencies and whiplash when somebody's coming in with almost an opinion-based directive that can shift, you know, so much work in different directions. So that's one piece, I think, is getting that buy-in, needing that buy-in from the top to understand that you want to be operating from an insights driven culture. And then I think a second big blocker can be what we've talked about already, that very real concern that by opening up testing or research to non-specialists, data quality could be threatened. And, you know, I think that's legitimate, because bad data or insights is worse than no data or insights in a lot of cases, because it can really give a false confidence or lead a team in the completely wrong direction to make investments or make changes. And so again, a tool like WEVO or Illuminate can help ensure that that rigor and quality aren't lost in the process of democratization. So it's an important piece as well.
Yeah, that totally tracks. I think anyone in the agency or consulting space has seen that far too often, and that idea of whiplash that you describe is a very visual. You can see teams do that when they're reactive in that way. So flipping that coin on the other side, what do you feel like you've seen as the biggest benefits to orgs that lead with insights?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of big ones. The one piece we've talked around confidence. So moving forward with confidence, being able to make timely decisions based in data and based on insights. I think there's a piece around being agile and being able to work iteratively. So you can sort of put something out in the world and then again, with confidence, make best decisions and then evolve that over time. I think, again, sort of if you're already in that, mode of operating, then you will be more willing to change course of action also when new data comes in, just be prepared for that. So I think there's this level of agility that comes to play as well. And then I think another big piece that doesn't always get talked about, but is one of the major benefits, is just alignment. So if everybody is really centered and oriented towards insights and they're looking at the same insights, then, naturally comes with it this sense of alignment and shared purpose, shared understanding of what those real world constraints are, or other things that come into play. So, and it's not just at looking at the insights. If you're democratizing in the way that we've talked about as well, where you're bringing people in from the ground up and from the get-go, then there's alignment all the way through, because they've witnessed that collection of insights and they have buy-in that doesn't then need to happen after the fact.
Yeah, I could see shared purpose being, part of a company's vision and mission statement really easily, and that leading a lot of this forward. That makes a lot of sense. Um, Tying back to what you were talking about and sort of flipping this, just to really specify, what are the risks when these orgs, we talked about the blockers, we just talked about the benefits, but really what are the tangible risks when these orgs are not leading with insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked a bit about this as we've been chatting, but certainly a lack of clarity, a lack of confidence. If you're easily swayed by HIPPO leadership or feedback from an influential customer, then you get into situations where teams are spinning their wheels or undoing work, or work is wasted. And then I think the other piece of it is just making a big mistake that can really cost them trust with their customers, for example. I mean, that's the big piece there, is I think diminishing that relationship with customers can be a huge piece when you're not leading with human-centric insights, especially, then you can get in real trouble.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we see all the top organizations that outperform over and over again being customer centric. So yeah.
Mhm.
So specific to testing programs, getting a little tactical for a second, how do you really see insights being successfully leveraged in testing programs today?
Yeah, I think in our work and as we work with clients to grow their programs, we push for insights to be leveraged at multiple levels. So at sort of that base foundational level, we're bringing qualitative and quantitative insights into every test cycle. So those insights you already have, then at the beginning, you're bringing them in as a means to come at ideation and strategy from the most informed place possible. So while we're still trying to generate a diversity of ideas and options in that moment, for example, that's coming from a really targeted and data-driven, insight-driven place from the get-go. And of course, then there are insights that come out of the testing process itself, which help inform product and business decisions. And then in an ideal scenario, those insights have helped the team explore or validate or develop learnings about their customer. And then ultimately that's sort of can ladder up all the way through to, high level business decisions and strategy. So we sort of want to be looking at different types of insights. And again, at Brooks Bell, we've got a different sort of what we call an insights altitude. So sometimes your insights are really tactical and they have to do with a UI change. But again, they can ladder all the way up to, sort of who are your personas, who are your customers, who are you talking to, different strategies there and different insights to the business level at the very highest.
Amazing. Yeah. And then taking it all the way down the field, it impacts the business as it should to be customer centric.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So wrapping us up, this has been fantastic. I'd love to hear sort of your prediction for what the future of democratizing insights in organizations that are focused on digital optimization is going to look like.
Yeah. Well, I'm very intrigued myself to see where it goes. Like I said, it's kind of a hot topic, and certainly all sorts of conversations are being centered around this, between the type of tools that people are developing to the way teams are working, and certainly, as an agency, the type of services and things we're providing. But I think in applied research in general, we're seeing a push for democratization. And I think that's a good thing personally. I think if the proper training and infrastructure and support are in place, democratizing research and the insights that come out of it helps to bring a diversity of perspectives to the table. And it helps more people across an organization have a deeper understanding of, and I believe respect for, an insights-led approach. And it helps scale up the generation of insights, and therefore speed up good decision making across an organization. So I think all of that are very good things. So I think we'll see more and more teams moving in that direction, and optimization will just keep evolving from there.
Amazing. Such great content today. Sarah, thank you so much. This was a delight. I know we could both geek out talking about this stuff
We
all day
could,
long.
yeah.
So thank you again, Sarah Mason, Brooks Bell. We really appreciate it, and looking forward to testing more together.
Thanks for having me. It was nice chatting with you.